Welcome back.
Dance.
Rhythm games are my favorite type of game. Over the years, I've sunk hundreds of hours into rhythm games. See, there's usually two basic elements to any game. There's gameplay and story. Different types of games have to balance these two elements. There's some games that focus on story, stuff like Detroit Become Human and Ace Attorney. Some games focus on gameplay, like Downwell and Little Big Planet, and some try and find that balance between the two, like Pokemon and Undertale. Rhythm games are an interesting case, being that they focus completely on gameplay and almost usually zero on story. Of all the rhythm games I've played, Osu, Rhythm Heaven, Stepmania, Beat Saber, Beat Hazard, Clone Hero, Vib Ribbon, Sound Dodger, one stands out as the one I've enjoyed the most. Now, if you're a member of the GD community, you probably know that there's been a bit of a debate within the community over whether or not Geometry Dash is actually a rhythm game or not. The general consensus that I've found is that GD is a rhythm-based platformer, with some elements of a rhythm game and large crossover with the GD community and other rhythm game communities. For the most part, I agree with that assessment. Most GD levels you could play without the music and still probably do fine. The music is more of a backdrop to the level instead of the focal point, like in a lot of rhythm games. I have a love-hate relationship with Geometry Dash. On the one hand, it has one of the best forms of progression in any game, initially hooking the player with its simple base game levels, leading them up to the first demon level, and then opening the floodgates with hundreds of thousands of online levels. The dopamine rush you get when you finally complete a level that you spent hours practicing is unparalleled in my experience. On the other hand, this game sucks. The game is horribly unoptimized, the community can be less than ideal, and the game hasn't gotten an update in 3 years, and yet I can't stop playing it. But firstly, we should talk about how I got to this point. This was the first GD video I had ever seen, and to be honest, it kinda took me aback, but I'll get to that in a second. Like most kids, I had played a little bit of GD on my mom's phone back when it came out. I didn't want to pay for the full version, so I was limited to the first 8 levels, which were pretty bare bones. I remember deleting the app because I wasn't really good enough to beat anything past Can't Let Go, and to be honest, the game didn't really blow me away or anything, and megabytes were a hot commodity on the iPhone 4. A few years went by, and I hadn't really thought about Geometry Dash. I had other priorities. I was playing stuff like Mario Maker and Smash 4. I didn't have time for phone games like that. That was my mentality until I found the video mentioned earlier. I'm not sure why it was recommended to me. I of course hadn't watched any GD videos prior, but seeing the video I was definitely intrigued.
Oh my god!
I was left with more questions than answers, really. I had no idea that there were custom levels inside GD, and I didn't have any clue that there were levels so hard they pushed the boundaries of what was humanly possible. That night I did some research and found the GD side of YouTube. I bought the full game and I started playing it and learning about the game's history. Then I bought the game on PC. I beat a couple of the main levels, including some of the harder ones like X-Step and Clutterfunk. I made some pretty basic levels and experimented with the editor. It quickly became a game that I was playing regularly, and I essentially completed the initiation that most GD players do. If you play GD, you probably noticed that there's been a topic I'm kinda dancing around. A topic that's really hard to avoid when talking about GD because it really is the backbone of this game. The group of people that turn this game from a fun rhythm platformer into a test of skill and patience. I'm of course talking about the elephant in the room. It would be really easy for me to compare the GD community to other rhythm-based games. Some of these comparisons, I imagine, would be valid. GD does have famous players who constantly are in a battle with themselves for self-improvement. They do challenge the status quo with every level they complete, and this is the mindset of most GD players. They're either trying to work themselves up to the next challenge or trying to create the next challenge. The comparison to other communities I don't think is valid though, for a number of other reasons. When I joined the GD community, it was the first time I had ever seen such a tight-knit group. We were all bound by similar interests, bound by the next hardest level in progress of being verified, mysterious players that the community didn't really know about, levels lost to time without any copies, just word of mouth from veterans of the game. I said earlier that I believe GD is a game that focuses entirely on gameplay rather than story, and while I do think that is true, there is a story. The story is that of a community that has been active for 7 years, a community of dedicated players and creators. It's like any other community really. There's controversy and drama between players, there's celebration when new levels are verified and released. When I joined the GD community, it was still riding the coattails of arguably the biggest peak of the game, the 1.9 update. The game had undergone a transformation, and the level editor had become a tool to create the next hardest challenge over and over again. The entire community spouted from a shared interest in this game, with most videos just being proof of legitimate level completion. These level replays would continue being the main form of content in the community, but there were some different videos, mostly just exposing cheaters in the game, but these were few and far between. Who could blame them though? To most people, there wasn't really anything deeper to Geometry Dash besides an addictive game with some kinda cool user-made levels. From my point of view, the Geometry Dash community just seemed like a group of friends who uploaded their achievements online. This sort of changed when C uploaded his videos about the community. He was a pretty dedicated researcher with a passion for a side of the community a lot of people didn't know about. See, the game got popular back in like 2014 to 2015, right around when the Steam version was released. People started to play the game using a mouse rather than a touchscreen. This new control method allowed for players to get insanely good at the game, and several people started to gain notoriety around the community. A couple players who come to mind are Riot, Sandstorm, Gyron, and Cyclic. These guys would push the boundaries of what the community thought was possible, beating old levels that were hack verified or new levels that were built solely for the purpose of being extremely difficult. Their achievements were posted on YouTube, mostly just to prove their legitimacy, but these videos would attract fan bases, and these fans would become members of the community too. I was one of these fans. I wanted to be like Riot or Cyclic. I wanted to either be good at the game or to make a level that would blow people away. I tried so desperately to join the community. I made my GD YouTube channel, I uploaded level replays that, looking back, really were not that difficult. I messaged famous players and creators trying to collab, and I kept trying and failing to generate hype for my own levels. I think this sentiment was kinda shared by a lot of players in this game. Players like Riot were icons in the community. I know I looked up to him a lot and I wanted to be half as skilled as him. Riot had pretty much become the protagonist of Geometry Dash. His skill was unmatched, and he beat all the hardest levels at the time, seemingly with ease. At his peak, he beat Bloodbath, which was the hardest level in the game at the time. Bloodbath went 8 months without a victor. Back then, it was the ultimate test of skill, and it is still a very worthy challenge nowadays. It utilized every game mode, and it had gameplay that was seen as nearly impossible. Riot dropped this bombshell onto the community, taking his spot at number 1 and then losing interest in the game and leaving the community. Now that he had beaten the hardest level in the game, there was really nowhere to go but down. This cycle of players leaving the community has happened a lot in this game. The player will join the community, quickly climb up the ranks, leave their mark on the community with a huge achievement, and then get bored with the game and leave. And for GD players and fans of these guys, this can get frustrating. It's disappointing to watch someone reach the top, witnessing their journey from start to finish, and once they get to the top, watching them disappear. Obviously, to these players, being GD content creators was tiring and boring, and it's stupid to expect these creators to continue playing a game they no longer enjoy. But when my favorite players left the game, I couldn't understand why. GD had become my favorite game. I played it every day after school, I made friends through GD, some that I still talk to today. I couldn't understand how someone could get bored with the game. I mean, it was just so replayable and rewarding to play. I just couldn't fathom how anyone could get bored with such a great game. And then it happened to me. Eventually, this game became dull to me. It felt like a cycle. I'd make a level I was proud of, or start making progress on my next challenge, then I'd hit a roadblock. No matter how you slice it, GD is a game that requires a lot of patience, which I do not have. You can grind out levels and gain skill, or you can spend hours creating levels. Without this patience, playing the game becomes demotivating. I felt like I could never be good enough to beat anything actually difficult or make a level worthy of attention. I experienced that feeling of demotivation and not having fun with Geometry Dash that all my favorite players also experienced. I wanted to get better at GD, but I didn't put in the dedication to do so. I wanted to make better levels, but I wasn't willing to put in the time to make good looking levels. As GD got a little boring for me, other games caught my attention. I burned out on Geometry Dash. The things I used to love about the game seemed dull and muffled. This is that cycle I was talking about earlier, the cycle that has plagued the GD community for years, and now I was experiencing for the first time firsthand. I watched as I played the game less and less, I drifted away from my closest friends, and I stopped enjoying the game as a whole. My interest in the game shrunk more and more until one day, without realizing, I closed Geometry Dash for the last time. I think I left GD at a good time. The community was pretty dormant, with progress on the newest and hardest demon, Bloodlust, being slow. I found it pretty hard to get excited for community events like new level releases. The style of popular levels got so complicated I figured I would never be able to make something that would look good enough to get rated. So I moved on. I went to other games and I found similar tight-knit communities, and while they were not as compelling as the GD community, I still met some good friends through them. There were times where I missed the GD community, but I never looked back. I never really had the commitment or the motivation to rejoin it. Nowadays, my Geometry Dash account is pretty dormant. My unfinished levels sit in the create menu, most I'll probably never finish. A fair few demon levels beaten, all things considered, with posts on my account to coincide. My YouTube channel being completely inactive, with the last video being an announcement of my migration to this channel. It remains an artifact in my life at the time, with playlists of music I liked back then and countless comments showing bits of my personality at the time. I've kept some notes on where the community has gone, and for the most part, I think it has gotten itself out of that rut that it was in when I left. I think a lot of the players have grown up a bit, making for a more mature community as a whole. GD content creators have started to hire editors, making their videos much more entertaining and making any other replay style video seem outdated. I'm not part of the community anymore by any means, but sometimes it's just so tempting to As of late, I've gotten back into the game, but I'm not really sure if I want to be back into the community. I haven't really been making any levels or anything. I haven't been watching any GD YouTubers. I'm still burnt out from all that. The community has changed so much. There's faces I don't recognize and levels I can't keep up with, and sure, the game has changed a lot too, and it would be easy for me to say that with all the changes that have happened since I first got into this game, that the game isn't the same, but I'm not going to do that. Geometry Dash at its core is still the game I love. Geometry Dash is playing those first few levels, working your way up to the next challenge. It's discovering the level editor and building some levels with abysmal gameplay and little to no decoration. It's finally beating a demon level after putting attempt after attempt into it until it all culminates into that one flawless run. It's waking up one morning and finding 2.1 came out and trying to be the first person to beat Finger Dash, watching players leagues ahead of you in skill beat levels that look impossible. The magic of Geometry Dash hasn't gone anywhere. It's been there since its inception. Through all the updates, changes, overhauls, the things that make the game so great are still there. It's not just a little mobile block game, it's so much more than that.